Alright, so the last thing that I did was I got the basic download functionality working. Now, as it is, this script will download files directly to the current working directory, the folder from which you are running the script. So I go to the containing folder, and here it is. Now, what I want to do is instead download to a download folder, which I've made here already. So to do this, I have to change a few settings. What I have to do is change the download path to this folder here. First though, I have to check if this directory exists. Now, if it does exist, great. But if it does not, I have to create that directory. And that is what I will be doing next. So now, what I want to do is create the download directory. Now, these are file system operations, so what I need is to import another library. And that library is this. Now earlier, I said that what I want to do was check if this directory existed, and if it did exist, do nothing. But if it did not exist, create that directory. So let's do the first part, which is check if it exists. So basically, what I have to do is list all the files in the working directory, the directory from which you are running the script. And I'm going to do that at the very start. So here. So what I'm going to do is this. The first step is to list all the files which are in the working directory. So this is how I can do that. First, I have to get the path of the current working directory. Next, I have to set the name of the download directory that I want to use. So I'm going to call it download directory. And I'm going to, let's say that I want downloaded files. So I have this, great. Next, what I have to do is go through the list of files within the current working directory, and then check if first off there are any folders, and if there are any folders, do any of those folders have this name, downloaded files? So for this, I'm going to use a for each loop. Now, a for each loop basically loops through a series of objects instead of a series of numbers like a normal for loop does. So I'm basically going to loop through each of the files within the working directory. First though, I have to get the list of files in the working directory. And here's how I can do that. First, I'm going to make something to hold the list of files, so call it files in working directory. And this is how I can do it with this bit here. And I'm going to change working directory to my list, to my working directory. Okay, so I got that done. And just to see exactly what this thing outputs, I'm going to print this out to the terminal. And let's see what happens. Now, look at this here. This is a list of all the files in the directory that I am currently working in. And you can see it here as well. So that works just fine. Alright, now I'm going to loop through every file within this list of files. In Python, a for each loop works like this. You start with for, and then in this particular case, what I want to do is loop through each file. Now, you could call this basically whatever you want. You could call it A, B, X, whatever. It's just a variable. I'm calling it file. So for every file in, and I want to loop through this here, which is the list of files in the working directory. And for now, I am just going to print out on a separate line each individual file, just to show you how a for each works. And okay, I finally got that right. And look at that. Right here. So that works just fine. Now, I need to check if this directory here exists. So I need to first keep track of whether or not that directory exists. So one way I can do this is pretty simple. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a variable, call it download directory exists, and I'm going to, for now, call it false. Now, when this is true, the download directory exists. When it's false, it does not exist. So now, how do I check whether or not something is a directory? So I can do it like this. I'm going to make an if statement. But instead of a condition like this, I'm going to use a function to return true or false. And this function here is part of the OS library which I have imported. And what it does is it basically checks if something is a directory. So I'm going to check if, wow, what was it? File is a directory. For now, I'm just going to check if whatever it's iterating through is a directory. And for testing purposes, I'm going to print out, first off, what file I'm currently on, and then is a directory. So let's see what happens. There should be exactly one directory. And when I run this thing, yep, test download is a directory, and I guess there's two, but whatever. It is showing that certain files are a directory. That is good. Now, next I need to do this. Within this if, I need to check if something is a directory, if the name of that directory is this, which is downloaded files. So I'm going to toss in an if statement within that if statement. So if I said file is equal to downloaded files, then I'm going to set this flag variable to true. And I'm also going to just, to see what's happening, print to the terminal, download directory already exists. So, I should not see that message, because there is no folder called that, just this one here. Excellent. So that worked out. Now, after the initial check, what I want to do is, if this is still false, meaning that the download directory does not exist, then I want to create the download directory. So for that, an if statement. So then, if download directory exists is equal to false, then what I'm going to do is create the download directory. So how can I do that? I can do it like this. So this function is built into is part of the OS library, which I have imported. And I want to create this directory, downloaded files, and print out a message saying that download directory has been created. Okay, so and look at that. Download directory has been created. I should be seeing download files. That's good. Now, if I were to run this again, I should see download directory already exists. So that works. So now that I know that the download directory will be created when it doesn't exist, I'm going to remove these print statements because I don't need them anymore. So I have my download directory. What I need to do now is download the video to the download directory. And I can do that by adding an option to the download options. Right about here. So the option that I want is this. And this takes the full file path of the downloaded file as a parameter. And this full file path is basically, if I can show you something, kind of like this, like the full path. So the full file path will look a little something like this. So let's say that this is the working directory. Then I've got to add the download directory, and then I've got to add the file name. As long as I'm talking about file paths, I will say this. So on Linux, this is what a file path looks like. Notice how it uses slashes like this. On Windows, the file path uses this kind of slash. Now, that should not matter here because I'll be using Python functions to generate the file path. So if you're on Windows, then this should not be a problem, I think. Back to this. How do we generate a file path? Well, this is how I can do it. I can do it with this. So this function here works by taking multiple file paths and then merging them into one single valid file path. So, what am I starting with? I am starting from the working directory, which is here. Where was it? Yeah, here. And then from the working directory, I am going forward into the download directory. And then from the download directory, I am going forward into the file name. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to assume that the title is the same as the file name. So basically, for this to work, what I would have to do is essentially loop through the lists here and then download everything based on the inputs. That is the next thing that I'll be working on. But for now, I am going to put in a dummy file name just to show you how this works. And let's put in this as the dummy file name. Okay, so now that I have this, I have to return this to a variable. So I'm going to call it full file path. And full file path is the parameter for this option. I'm going to remove this because I don't need this anymore. And I'm going to put in a comment here saying that save to download directory. Now, let's see what happens. I go download, and then enter link. Let's go pirate, and pirate, and pirate. Yes, I do. And I'm going to go done. And then it downloads. And I go to download files. And look at that. I could say anything right about now. And it's probably not going to be copyrighted. So here we are. I now have the downloaded file going into the download directory. Alright. So now that I have this all working, I'm going to put this into a loop and then loop through the list of links. So I am going to comment out this because I will need it in like a second. Now, download the links. I want to loop through everything in this list here and then download it one by one. So for that, I can use just a normal for loop that goes through indexes. Because again, these lists here, they're matching lists, right? So one thing is linked by the index. So I am going to loop through the list of links. So I'm going to go for, and then I want from 0 to the length of this here, and I can use the length of any one of these lists because they all have the same length. But I'm going to use the links just because the range function in Python goes from this number to right before this one. It does not include the last number of the range. So let's say the range was from 0 to like 5. The range function would go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it would stop at 4 and not go to 5. So that's why I don't need the -1 here. Okay, so, and I am going to put in a print statement just so I don't have an error. Alright. Now, at this point, I am going to do the following. I'm going to download from each link. I'm also going to apply metadata for each link. I need the link I'm downloading from. That's one thing. Next, I need the particular title for this link. Next, I need the artist, was it? Yeah, the artist. And finally, I need the album. Now I can start downloading. So, first things first, I need to set the download options. Download options. And now I need the file path, but thankfully I already have most of it. And it goes from the working directory to the download directory. The only difference here is that I'm using the title as the file name. So here we are. And then finally, I need to actually download it. So I'm gonna fix this indenting. Okay. I think that should be good. Now, let's see what happens. So, this is what I want. I go download, and then enter a link, and pirate title, pirate artist, and pirate album. Because I guess we're all pirates, you know? Yes, I do. Okay, excellent. And done. It's downloading. Okay. And look at that. I could say anything right about now, and it's probably not going to be copyrighted. And it has the file name is what I put in. So that is great. Okay. So now that we have this, we're almost done actually. So, let's see if this works with multiple links though. So, I'm going to copy this again, and I'm going to go download. Okay, enter a link. So this is the first one, and enter a link. This is the second one. I should be seeing 2 files, and it looks like I have an error. So I looked into the problem, and it turns out that it is not possible to manually set the file name. So before, I had this. What I did was that I changed the full file path to this. So the new file path is basically saving straight into the current working directory. And then through some research, where was it? Here, to get downloading multiple files working, well, I came across this bit here, which I had to put in. Anyway, so right now, it's saving to the current working directory, so here and not here. So now, if I run this, I'm gonna start this thing. And okay, I go download and enter a link. Now let's say I want it to be this, this, this. Yes, I do. And another link, this, this, and this. Yes, I do. And I go done. And now it works. But as you can see here, there's one file, and that's because I've put in the same link twice. Now, what I wanted to do was to be able to put the same link more than once, except with different metadata. I guess I can't do that anymore. So that's one thing that I have to fix. So let's make it work again. I'm gonna remove this. And alright, fine, let's have unique links. So I'm gonna do this again, and the other one will be called B, but it's a different link. Okay, and I download it. And I see two files here. So what I have done here is I've basically made the file name using yt-dlp options, the title, and the extension. So the title and the extension. Now, as a result of this change, I can't apply metadata at the same time when I download files. What I've also done is added this option here, which basically makes it so that the date created when I download it is actually the time and date that I downloaded it. So as you can see here, it says modified 640, so it's 641, and modified 640, it's 641. So like about a minute ago. So here's the new plan. I'm going to download the files directly to the folder where the script is being run from. Now it downloads MP3 files. And these MP3s have a creation date, which is the time and date that they were downloaded. So like this one here was downloaded at 6:40, it's 6:51. So 11 minutes ago. Now, what I can do now is basically sort all the MP3 files which were downloaded from the first file created to the last file created. So I suppose that's what, like in descending order based on time, I think, something like that. Well, anyways, I'm gonna do that, and then that should match up with the order that I put in the metadata and links. So I'm going to make a loop which matches up those two things, the listing of files by creation date with the earliest first, and the order that the metadata was added, and then I'm going to add the metadata that way, and then once that's done, I'm going to move and also rename those files into the downloaded files folder. Alright, so this is where it gets interesting. So first what I have to do is get a list of all MP3 files, except list them from the first created one to the last created one. So to do this, first I need a list to store the list of MP3 files. Since I need the creation time as well, I also need a list for the creation times of each of the MP3 files, and these two lists will be synchronized. So the first thing that I have to do is basically loop through all the files which are in the current directory. For this, I'm going to use a for each loop. Now, to process each file, what I first have to know is the file path to that file. Now, the file path consists of the working directory, which the script is being run from, and then the file name. Now that I have the path to the file, what I can do is basically separate the file name from the file extension. So what I've done is I've used this function here, which is part of the OS library, and basically what it does is it separates the file name and the file extension. Now that I have the file extension, what I can do now is basically look through each file in the working directory and then check if the file extension is MP3. And all I've done here is just made a variable to hold the file extension that I'm looking for. So, if the file extension is MP3, the first thing that I want to do is append the file path to the list of MP3 files. I've created the list of MP3 files here, and I'm using it down here. The next thing that I want to do is get the creation time of the file and then append it to the list of file creation times, this here. This is because I'm going to need the file creation time to sort the files from first to last in terms of when they were downloaded. Now, this function here is part of the OS library, and it basically just gets the creation time. Now, before I continue on, let's see if this works. So, what we're going to do now is run this thing. But first, I'm going to put in this part here, so I don't forget what I'm doing. So, open up the terminal, and I'm going to run the program. Okay, so I go download, and then I want this one here. And then 111, yes I do. And I need a second unique link, call it this one here. So enter it in, and 2, 2, and 2, yes I do. Okay, now I'm gonna go done. Well, it downloaded, that's what I expected. And there's no errors, that's good. So what I want to know though is if the correct data was actually saved. So I'm going to print the contents of these two lists, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to exit out, run this thing again, to go download, and start with this link. Call it 1, 1, and 1, yes I do. And I need another unique link, so let's go with this one here. And 2, 2, and 2, yes I do. So let's go done. And what I'm interested in is this right here. You can see that in the first list, this one here, I have 2 file paths. And that should be correct because there are 2 MP3 files, this and this. And I see 2 file creation times here in the second list. And it's in Unix time, which is just a number. So that's easy to process. So that's good. Alright, now that I have this, I can continue on to applying the metadata. I am sorting the files from the first downloaded to the last downloaded, so I'm basically sorting by the creation time. This means that I have to sort the list of creation times from the smallest to the largest, and I can do that like this. What I've done is I've made a copy of the list of file creation times and then used a function to sort the contents of it, and this function sorts from smallest to largest. And yeah, this is where I'm going to get crazy with the indexes. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through the list of the sorted file creation times. And I'm just going to use a standard index for loop here. Now, the reason why I'm looping through the sorted file creation time list is because I need the files listed from the first downloaded to the last downloaded. So, within this loop, what I first need is the value of the current index. This is the file creation time that I want to look for. I am storing it in this variable here. Now, within this for loop, I'm going to loop through the list of MP3 files in the current directory. The reason I'm doing this is because I need to find the file which has the creation date of this. This is what I'm going to do. So, if the file creation time of the file which is being looped through in the inner loop is equal to this here file creation time that I'm looking for, then I've found the correct file. And if that's the case, what I'm gonna do now is apply the metadata. So to apply the metadata, I'm gonna use MusicTag. MusicTag requires a direct file path. So what I first need is the file path of the file that I want to apply metadata to. So I've made a variable which is the file that I am opening, and the value is the matched file which has the creation date of this, which is what I'm looking for. So the first thing that you have to do when using MusicTag is you have to open the file up. So I'm going to do just that. What I've just done is I've made a variable to hold the open file. Now this function here basically makes the file open and available for editing, and I'm opening this file path. So now that the file is ready to be edited, I'm going to first apply the title. Now pay attention to this index here. This index should match up with the correct piece of metadata, since I'm looping through the list of MP3 files sorted from first downloaded to last downloaded. Basically, this means that the number of MP3 files should be the same as the number of links that were downloaded from. And because the order that I am reading the files from is the first file downloaded to the last file downloaded, the metadata should be applied in the correct order to the correct file. So, on to the next piece of metadata, which is the artist, and then finally the album. So, I'm going to do that. And if you're wondering how I applied the metadata here, well, I just looked it up on the documentation. Anyways, now that I have the metadata applied, I have to save it. And I can do that like this. Now that I've saved the metadata, the next thing that I want to do is rename and move the file into the download directory. So for that, what I first need is the file path of the file that I want to move. To that end, I've made a variable here, and the value is file to open, which is this, and that's the file path of the file which I have just applied the metadata to. Now that I have the file path of the original file, what I need is the file path of the move destination, so where it's going. Now, the new file name will be the title. Now that I have the new file name, what I need is to create the path to the download directory. So here it is. So what I've done is I've made a variable here to hold the file path that I'm moving the file to. And I've joined a bunch of things to make that file path. So I'm starting from the working directory, moving into the download directory, and then moving into the new file name, which is, well, the file name, and then the extension .mp3. Now I can move the file. Now this function here, os.rename, technically renames files, but I can move a file by simply renaming it from its original file path to the new file path. So let's see if this works. First, I'm going to save what I've done, and I'm going to go into the containing folder, and I'm going to remove everything that I've downloaded so far. Okay, now I'm going to run this thing, and let's see what happens. Here we go. And I'm going to go download, and I want this one here, and let's call it 1, 1, and 1, so I know that this is the first link that I've entered. And the second link, which must be unique now that I've made these changes, called this one here. So I'm going to enter that in, and I'm going to call the title 2, artist 2, and album 2, so I know that this is the second the second link that I have entered. And for reference, this is the second link. I could say anything right about now, and it's probably not going to be copyrighted. And this is the first link. I need another unique video to make this thing work. So here it is. Alright, so let's see if this works. I'm going to go done, and it's downloading, and great. So now you'll notice that there are no MP3 files in the working directory. Instead, they're in the downloaded directory. And I see it's called 1 and 2. So I'm sorting it from the latest file to the earliest file. So I should be seeing 2 at the top, so that's correct. And let's see if it's the correct file. Bear in mind that the first link was this one here, which is this. I need another unique video to make this thing work. So I need another unique video to make this thing work. That's the right one. And the second link was this one here, which is I could say anything right about now. And number 2, I could say anything right about now, and it's probably... So yeah, the metadata went into the right file, and the files were moved into the download directory. So this is basically, well, the core functionality. So that's done. Now, I could stop here, except there are still a few problems. For instance, I'm going to run this again, and I'm going to go download. And what if I type in this, which is not a valid link, and then whatever, and I go done. Whoops. Let's do that again. Hold on a minute. Yeah, here we are. Okay, so I've entered in this information here, which is not a valid link. If I go done, it kind of crashes because it can't download. So there are a number of safeguards which I have to put in. That's what I'll be doing next, and then this thing will be done.